All right, we are completely live. Josh, we are live now.
Whoa.
Here on the Conservative Echo Chamber, as you can see, there is a video entitled Don't Cash, Crop My Cornrows, which is actually somewhat of a really great title, if not completely misleading. Not about the content of the video, but about the truthfulness of the video. But of course, it's kind of hard to do a video that to comment on a video that we completely agree with because the video would consist of us playing the video in question and saying, "Oh yeah, I agree with that. Well, I agree with that. I agree with that too. I agree. I agree." Which
I
is
love it when we
kind of
all
boring.
come together.
Yes. So this is going to be one that we don't necessarily agree with because that's how we roll.
Uh, it saddens me, John. It saddens me because, honestly, I like this actor in Hunger Games. I thought she was pretty good. I mean, her name is kind of hard to pronounce sometimes. Amandla, or however one would pronounce that.
Amandala.
Amandla. I don't care how
Amanda
you
la la
pronounce
la la
it.
la la la. Do you think she was like? Do you think she was bullied by that, like when she was a kid? Hey, Amanda, la 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 la.
Amandla. I mean, Miss Stenberg would be overdoing it a bit, I think, and so
Do you think? Okay, who's that one guy? Mandela in
Mandela.
Africa.
That Mandela.
Mandela, yes.
Mandela.
Do you think that was? Do you think that might have been like the inspiration behind her naming, or maybe it was
I
just
have
a
absolutely
bad
no idea,
typo?
and we're gonna get in trouble if we speculate too much. Oh, we should have
This is
said
all
we.
good-hearted, natured fun, just for anyone who is wondering. All right, shall we? Shall we
We're about to
start?
watch.
Shall we start this, Biz?
Let's do this.
Let's do this.
So black hair has always been an essential component of black culture. Black hair requires upkeep in order for it to grow and remain healthy. So black women have always done their hair. It's just a part of our identity. Braids, locks, twists, and cornrows, etc. Cornrows are a really functional way of keeping black textured hair unknotted and neat, but like with style. So you can see why hair is such a big part of hip-hop and rap culture. These are styles of music which African American communities created in order to affirm our identities and our voices. In the early
Wait. So hip. See, I don't know if it's about affirming their identity and their voices so much as in the beginning, as we know, a lot of blues originated from slave songs. And slave songs were not about affirming their identity. It was more about like a survival strategy. You know, like creating something of their own that they could hold on to. Oh, maybe. But
Well,
what?
it's like this. Slave songs were, especially after a lot of the slaves converted to Christianity, even though they really weren't supposed to, because slave owners realized that if they converted to Christianity and started to read scripture, for example, that would mean they were literate, and then what would separate them from their masters? And so slave songs, in many ways, it was about keeping on task, keeping a level head, and sending messages, either messages of hope or Wade in the Water, of course, is talking about, hey, how to escape. And so
Right.
it was almost the backbone of maintaining their dignity in their captivity.
Yeah, I would also like to point out the other reason why slave owners might not want slaves to be able to read is because if they actually read the Bible, they would realize that all the verses that slave owners were trying to use to justify their slavery were all bullshit. They were so bullshit. I'm sorry. Even one, the way the Bible actually describes slavery is actually closer to indentured servitude, and there are actually types of slavery described in the Bible that actually apply today to like anyone with a credit card. According to the Bible, you would be a slave. It's stupid, I know, but like that's that equating the way the Bible actually views slavery is nothing like what slave owners did. And so even if they were trying to be religious about it, they were so full of shit. Bullshit. Let us continue.
In the 2000s, you saw many R&B stars wearing cornrows. Alicia Keys, Beyonce, R. Kelly, and
She
many
actually looks
more.
good like that.
As hip-hop became more and more popular and integrated into pop culture, so did black culture. Eminem's album went 4 times platinum, and he achieved immense success in the hip-hop world. Black culture had become popular. As the early 2000s turned into the 2010s, white people began to wear clothing and accessories associated with hip-hop. More and more celebrities could be seen wearing cornrows and braids, and even grills. So by 2013, the fashion world had adopted cornrows as well. Cornrows and braids were seen on high fashion runways for brands like Marquesa and Alexander McQueen, and magazines had editorial campaigns featuring cornrows as a new urban hairstyle. Riff Raff came onto the scene, a suburban white middle-class man who almost ironically took on a black accent and wore braids and gold teeth. And then James Franco took inspiration from Riff Raff for his role as Alien in Spring Breakers. And pop stars and icons adopted black culture as a way of being edgy and gaining attention.
Okay. It kind of annoys me that she completely equates
Yes.
black culture with hip hop.
And therefore,
Hold on. I'm sorry, I forgot to keep you on the mic, Josh. It annoys me the way that she equates hip hop culture with all of black culture. She should not confuse the two. The fact that people are coming to appreciate and enjoy and participate in elements of hip hop culture does not mean that they are partaking in all of black culture as a whole. Black culture as a whole is not limited to merely hip hop culture.
I think there's one important distinction we absolutely have to make before we continue. And I'm going to ruffle some feathers, but this is the conservative echo chamber, and so that's how we do. Okay?
How we do.
Black culture is not a culture. I'll grant that it's a subculture. Absolutely. And it has its merits, it has its flaws, like any other subculture.
Some big flaws.
Hip-hop is a subset of this subculture. So yes, there are certain trends, there are certain practices, there are certain beliefs, I would even argue, associated with this culture. But it's a subset of a subculture, not a wholly different culture. It's important to recognize this because one of the problems we're running into is the whole question of you're stealing from black culture. Stealing what?
Well, another thing that's important to keep in mind is the fact that if you're going to make this whole thing about culture versus culture, it's important to realize if black culture in America, quote unquote, is not the same as black culture in Africa. Black culture in America became what it was in part because of African culture mixing in with and being affected by, including a whole bit about slavery, being affected by, quote unquote, white culture or American culture. It is the synthesis of both American culture and African culture. So to go and pretend like, oh, I'm going to get in touch with my African roots. No, African culture is not the same thing as black American culture. They're not the same, even though elements came over from it. In the same way, you can't pretend that you're wholly separated from American culture, because without America, you would still be over. You would be over in Africa. Actually, you wouldn't exist, but because of butterfly effect. But you would be over in Africa. You would be getting water from a well and getting bags of rice and beans from Marines, and your entire economy may or may not be based on foreign aid from America. Instead, you're over here in America in air-conditioned houses, watching TV with a car in the driveway and complaining about how some white woman is wearing cornrows just like you. Let's be clear about that.
Without America, you would not be in Africa. Let's be realistic. Your ancestors' bones would be buried somewhere in Saudi Arabia. Sorry.
Ouch. No, that is a good point. That is a good point. Like the interesting thing is that America, the slave trade in America, between America and Africa, was actually only a small portion of the total slave trade that occurred. A larger part of it, and I don't remember the exact fraction, but it was like 2/3 or 3/4 of slaves that were captured in Africa by other Africans, mind you, actually went to the Middle East, where most of them died because of because of the Trans-Siberian crossing, which was brutally destructive. If you're a male and a slave and sent to Siberia, over the Siberian Peninsula, there was like only a 1 in 10 chance that you would survive, because even if you made it over there, they would then like castrate you, and then there was like a risk of infection and like really nasty stuff. Like, and that's why the Middle East has almost no black people. That's why, because even though they took way more slaves than America did, they were so brutal that the lifespan of a slave in there, in the Middle East was less than 10 years. I think it might have been less than 5 years, but it was definitely less than 10 years. Whereas in America, you actually, would live to a decent age. I'm not justifying American slavery, but to pretend that slavery in America was the worst thing ever, it's like, okay, Josh, it's like the difference between a rape and a murder. Let's put it that way. Because in an essence, it is. Rape and murder are both heinous crimes. But if you had to make a choice, I don't want anyone to have to make the choice, but if you had to make the choice, Josh, between being raped and murdered, which one would you pick?
At least after one of them, I'd still be alive.
Yeah. I mean, you'd be minus your dignity, and you would probably make a couple slave songs to that's really depressing, actually. It's really depressing.
Abandoned joke.
We're gonna go the opposite direction now, because this is just terrible. We're okay.
Right. Tell you what. One more thing before we continue, okay? Now,
Okay.
I am by no means an expert in this subject. Please don't take my word for any of this. Actually, a lot of what I'm talking about comes from listening to lectures and interviews by Thomas Sowell. Thomas Sowell makes the case that much of the black subculture in America has almost nothing to do with Africa whatsoever, because the African influence was actually significantly less than we believe. In fact, much of modern American black subculture is actually based on rural England.
What?
Some of the examples, a lot of the slang terms that are associated with the black subculture are actually from rural England, like chitlins, the term for pork, pig intestines. That's a term used by poor English farmers back in the day. And he goes down.
This is just like depressing on a whole different level.
I know.
If it turns out that black people are complaining about cultural appropriation, despite the fact that their culture is appropriated from England, of all places.
Oh, it gets better than that. For example, talking about cornrows, dreadlocks, and other things, those hairstyles we know have existed at least since Sparta. So before the time of Alexander the Great, we know that they'd been using it. Why? Because they were functional. Because it worked. Because it kept your hair from becoming a problem when going into battle. And we know.
Right, but let's just acknowledge though. If you wore dreadlocks, you're probably a stoner. Wait, even back then. Even back then.
Well, yeah.
It's horribly bigoted of me. No, I'm just kidding. All right. Anyways, it is important to note that even though black hairstyle does include cornrows and things of that nature, often as a matter of functionality as much as it is art form, it is improper to pretend or to assert that that is the only culture from which cornrows could come or did come from, and it has existed, especially within warrior classes, of even white European and white Asian cultures for thousands of years.
There's a very good chance the Vikings also wore their hair in a...
No, man. I have Norwegian heritage. Don't ruin it for me. Don't wreck it for me. Fuck you. All right. Let's move on.
Okay.
2013, Miley Cyrus twerks and uses black women as props. And then in 2014, in one of her videos called "This Is How We Do," Katy Perry uses ebonics and hand gestures and eats watermelons while wearing cornrows before cutting inexplicably to a picture of Aretha Franklin.
I see you.
So, as you can see, cultural appropriation was rampant. Not only were white people becoming rappers, but they were excelling in the world of hip-hop.
wait. I just hold on.
When Ryan Lewis's song Thrift.
Okay, so I just want to point out, she's claiming twerking as being black culture. Now, I don't really care either way, but if you're gonna claim something to be a part of your culture, like I would try to claim only the good things. I wouldn't consider like twerking to be an art form or something to be proud of.
How dare you, John?
How dare white women shake their ass just like black women shake their ass? I mean, oh my God, the cultural appropriation, the appropriation, man. How dare she shake her ass in the way that I shake my ass?
Stop appropriating my butt.
I mean, it's just ridiculous, and I don't even know where to go with this. Like, how do you? Who complains about I know there's some jackass going like, but it's still appropriation. Like, I guess not really. I mean, like white women have been shaking their butts ever since like the beginning of time.
The friggin' caves.
The cave, exactly, right before a caveman bonked her over the head with a rock and dragged her by her cornrows back into the darkness of the cave to forcibly procreate with her.
While tattooing just hitched on her arm as he drags her back. Oh.
I can make so many evil jokes, but let's move on. Let's continue.
Top garnered a #1 spot on Billboard's year-end chart for 2013, and then Iggy Azalea's song Fancy reached #1 the following year. And in May of 2014, Forbes released an article titled Hip Hop's Unlikely New Star, a White Blonde Australian Woman.
I'm a little sad to
But
admit
at
it,
the
but
same
I like that
time,
song.
Police brutality against black people
Which one?
came to the forefront. In an incredible
Iggy
movement
song.
ignited by the murders of Trayvon Martin,
Never heard it.
Michael Brown, Tamir Rice, Eric Garner, and many others. People began to protest institutionalized racism by marching and by using
Yeah.
social
Okay.
media.
Hold on.
Celebrities
Oh, I love those buzzwords. Okay, let's let her get to her point first. Let's at least do that.
spread awareness and shared condolences, or at least some did, as Azealia Banks, a black female rapper, pointed out. As Azealia Banks observed in her tweets, white musicians who partook in hip-hop culture and adopted blackness, Iggy Azalea in particular, failed to speak on the racism that comes along with black identity. Banks and Azalea...
Okay. This. So in order for Iggy Azalea to participate in hip hop culture, not black culture, hip hop culture. Let's in order for her to do that, but then in order for her to do that, she has to talk about black issues. Then, I mean, because this is the problem that I have with this is this total one-sidedness of it. Because like we already mentioned before, this quote unquote black culture, which is actually black American culture, which is a synthesis of both American and a little bit of African influence, and apparently rural English culture too.
Yep.
I mean, does that mean that in order for black people to like use a computer, or have an iPhone, that they have to start talking about white issues? I mean, is that the trade-off?
You have to talk about Japanese problems, obviously.
I mean, this is serious. And she's going to make this point throughout this video, that in order for someone to participate in black culture and not be a total bigot or a hypocrite, that in order for them to do it and still be okay, they also have to talk about black issues, right? That's the statement.
Trust me.
If
I'm
you
saving the A-bomb.
if you the A-bomb, if you participate in black culture, you then have to speak about black issues. But here's the thing. White culture has done, black people participate in white culture way more than white people participate in black culture. I mean, white culture, quote unquote, created the computer. White culture, quote unquote, created the mass production of the car. White culture, quote unquote, brought forth most of the technology that brought us out of the Middle Ages. So, and it's kind of funny the things that she comments about too. But let's stay on track here. So logically, if participating in black culture means that you have to comment on black issues and support or deal with black issues, does that not mean that if you participate in white culture, that you have to go and support white issues? For example, interracial rape. the statistics, way back in the 60s, it used to be somewhat even, like black on white versus white on black rape. But right now, it's more than 10 to 1. Like the amount of white men raping black women is so low, it's negligible statistically. I think it's like 8. Like literally like 8 people that men who are white have raped black women. But on the other hand, it's like hundreds or even in the thousands of black men raping white women. Like the statistic is like 10 to 1 or 20 to 1. So, if me listening to hip hop means that I have to talk about and get all up in a tizzy about I think it's like 200 or so black people that are killed yearly by cops, which is only 200, like 200 lives suck, but it's 200 in a year, and it's not even that all of them are unjust. Some of them are probably justified killings. Like, if a black man attacks a cop, and the cop has to defend himself, and ends up shooting the man and killing him, that's a justified, thing. You can't say that's racism if the black man attacked the white cop first, right?
If, for example, he charges the cop.
Without his hands up, which apparently everyone seems to forget. Like the hands up don't shoot thing was a myth. But even that aside, so it's not 200 men being genocided. 200 blacks facing genocide on a yearly basis. It might be 50. It might be less than that. Because the number of actual, and this is the thing that bugs me, is like this assumption that if you're in a cop force, that suddenly means you're racist. Like what? Are we going to say that the police departments only hire racists? Is that what's going on?
You must be this.
Or if you're racist, you're more likely to try to join the police academy? Is that what's going on? No, it fails any sort of test. The reason why we're talking about police brutality as it affects black people is because the media has made a big issue about it. If the media, if Trayvon Martin had only been written about in a single local newspaper, right, and the media hadn't picked it up and splashed and been like, look at this police racism everywhere! Everywhere there's racism! Everyone go down to the city and complain, and we wouldn't hear about it. No one's making a big issue about the fact that 400 white people are killed every year by cops. That's more than one a day for those who are counting. Right? Or every time we bring up the fact that in Chicago alone, there's like 500 people killed on a yearly basis, including children. Like it's like 13-year-old kids and 12-year-old girls are getting mowed down in drive-by shootings. Right? But the people are complaining about police maybe or maybe not having had racial motivations in an altercation with a person of color. It's so on the one hand, like if by this rule, if participating in black culture requires that I care about black issues, then by that extension, if you're a black person and you listen to classical music, or you listen to country, then you're required to start complaining about the huge amount, the massive imbalance of black on white versus white on black rapes. Period. That's the extension.
And before you make the argument, no, that doesn't count because white people have a position of privilege in the world.
Sorry, if you're a white woman being beaten up and raped by a black man, you're not exactly in a position of power. No, sorry, nope.
People seem to have this romanticized view of white people being angels somehow above the suck of most of human history. Just a few quick examples. What do you suppose the word slave means?
Slav, aka a white person. The root word of slave is a white person. Literally.
We were the slave races. And you know what? We got sick of it.
I believe it was to the Moors, was it not?
To the Moors, to the Romans, to the Greeks for a little bit, Persians. Slavs were pretty much slaves everywhere, up through American history, actually. Well, not specifically Slavs, but the Irish. I think a few Slavs, actually, come to think of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what I want to know is that if I'm required... See, my parent, my great, however many great-grandparents actually came to America as immigrants. They were not a part of the original English/Germanic culture that started America. There were immigrants that came in, some from England and some from Norway. Okay? So
Forget
I want to
that.
know...
Most Americans were a part of it. What?
Right, yeah,
3%
yeah.
of the population?
It's somewhere between 3 and 1.5% maybe descended from slave owners. Now, here's the thing. If by virtue of my skin color, not by virtue of my heritage, not by virtue of my ancestry, but only by virtue of my skin color alone, if I'm required to pay reparations for black people, for the slavery of black people hundreds of years ago, then I'm going to wait, and I'm going to wait for, because the slavery of white people started before that. I will wait for all black people to pay me money in reparations for my ancestors maybe having been enslaved because my skin is white and white people were once slaves. I mean, this is if you're gonna follow the logic, you got to follow it to the end. Don't stop halfway. Don't bullshit. Follow it to the end. If you're, if I'm required, even, despite my heritage being exactly opposite, despite my ancestry not being, having not been about slaves, if I'm required to pay reparations, then black people are required to pay reparations to me, because before black people were slaves, white people were slaves.
Heck, white people are still slaves. Not in the United States.
But in other countries.
Still happens. Heck, everybody's been enslaved at some point. In fact, the Greek idea of slavery, this idea that slavery is somehow based on race, is a relatively new phenomenon. The idea back in the time of the Greeks, they understood it. It's you were in the wrong place at the wrong time, and so they said, hey, we're fully aware that you're people. We're fully aware that you're educated, and oftentimes they were more educated than their masters, better people, morally better people. And their masters readily admitted it and said, well, try not to be in the city when it's being conquered then, idiot.
Seriously, who would be in a conquered city? I mean, for God's sakes.
The audacity, really.
But the point is that this is a very one-sided and frankly blind and ignorant reasoning that's going on here, which is kind of sad because this woman is actually a very nice. She's talking in a very nice, polite, calm manner. Like, I would love to have a conversation with this person, but she's also kind of like ignoring where her logic is leading. On the one hand, right, and on the other hand, she's making an issue about Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown, which were just so blindly dogpiled on that it's almost impossible. I posted a single article by I forget what newspaper it was, but all it did was was talking about Michael Brown's previous criminal behavior, and I posted and I said, this is interesting. That's it. I didn't say, oh, he's a criminal and therefore, it wasn't racially motivated or anything like that. I just said, this is interesting. And I had black people, on Twitter calling me out as a racist because apparently talking about the truth is racism. I didn't even state a position on it. All I did was post an article, and that made me a racist. On the other hand, after the shooting of the black church that happened recently, I had a black person come up, and I think he might have been schizoid, but basically accusing me of being, by virtue of being white. Now, he was mostly rational, and my AVI does not have my face in it. It doesn't show my skin color. He was mostly rational until he realized that I was not black and that I was in fact white. After that, the crazy shit hit the fan, and he was going on and on about how I probably would just love to go and shoot up a black church, and I should just stop talking to him and go shoot up a black church for once. Like this, like apparently because I'm white, and because some other guy with white skin was did something heinous, did something terrible, committed a tragedy. Apparently now I'm responsible for that, and I'm just like him. Like
That
this
escalated quickly.
Yeah, it did escalate. I was like, what the hell, man? Look, you can be concerned about black issues, but that does not excuse people from being idiots. Because that's what's going on. When people say, you need to go participate in black culture, what they usually end up meaning is you need to go and mindlessly support this one narrative without questioning it at all, or else you're a racist. Because that's the truth of what happens. That's what happens. If I go out there and question something, I am branded a racist by black people and by some white people too. Like, we can't have a conversation. We can't have if you want to have a conversation about race, you need to stop fucking doing that. Sorry, that needs to happen. You need to stop saying like, oh yeah, you can't understand because you're white. That doesn't have. That's not a conversation. You don't want to have a conversation if that's the bullshit you're spewing. If you're spewing that kind of crap, what you're actually saying is, I'm right, you're wrong, and you need to cower before me and enslave your mind to whatever I say because of my skin color. That's what you're saying.
You, Tumblr.
We're directly looking at you. Now, I'm not accusing Amandla Steinberg, or however her name is pronounced, of being this evil bitch. Let's be clear. I'm talking about the generality of my experiences now of other black people within the context of these events, right? Just within the context of these events. I've had plenty of nice interactions with wonderful people of all skin color.
That sounds so cliche.
It's so stupid that I have to qualify it like that. It's so fucking stupid I have to qualify that like that. But basically, when it comes to racial issues, black people act like fucking assholes. I don't want to have to say that. I'm just saying that's my experience. And I don't say, I don't go out there and being, I fucking post a single article of Michael Brown about him being, having had criminal stuff and say, huh, interesting. Completely neutral. Completely fucking neutral. It's not like I went, oh, Michael Brown was a rapist and an asshole and all. No, I said, huh, this is interesting. Period. That was the tweet. And I get called a racist for it. Or I go and I say hi to someone and I get called, a potential black church, murdering KKK member. No, like literally he accused me of being in the KKK, which, I mean, if I am apparently, well, at least I didn't have to pay the fees for joining, but...
You're not even a Democrat.
I'm not even a Democrat. But if that's what the conversation is going to be, forgive me, I don't want to participate. I don't. Who the fuck wants to go into a conversation where I immediately get branded a racist just for being open-minded and asking questions? That's fucking stupid. Nobody wants to be a part of that conversation except for the self-righteous asshole. And I'm not even accusing all black people, but the people who seem to be doing it are black, and I hate the fact. I absolutely abhor the fact that some of these stereotypes are coming out. Like, I don't like confirming stereotypes. I really don't. I want to be able to say there are some, there are some nice white people, there's some bad black people. Talk about goddamn Freudian slip. There's some nice white people, there's some bad white people, and there's some nice black people, and there's some bad black people. There's some nice Asian people, there's some bad Asian people. It goes all over. But instead...
I actually have a hypothesis.
Oh, do you?
Yes, I do. Because we were talking about differences in crime rates between blacks and whites. You want to know what makes those differences absolutely disappear? If the black individual just moved here from Africa, their crime rate is virtually zero.
Yeah.
It's almost immeasurable. It happens so infrequently, it's not even worth talking
Right.
about.
Well, okay, because there are actually a couple things I want to bring up, but let's finish the video here.
Oh boy.
And what? It's okay. We'll go through this together. Go through it together.
I'll finish my
Feuded
hypothesis
on
later.
Twitter until Banks participated in an interview on New York's Hot 97.
I have a problem when you're trying to say that it's hip hop and you're trying to put it up against black culture. It's like a cultural smudging was what I see. All it says to white kids is oh yeah, you're great, you're amazing, you can do whatever you put your mind to. And it says to black kids, you don't own not even the shit you created for yourself. And it makes me upset.
That itself is what is so complicated when it comes to black culture. I mean, the line between cultural appropriation and cultural exchange is always going to be blurred, but here's the thing. Appropriation occurs when a style leads to racist generalizations or stereotypes where it originated, but is deemed as high fashion, cool, or funny when the privileged take it for themselves. Appropriation occurs when the appropriator is not aware of the deep significance of the culture that they are partaking in. Hip-hop stems from a black struggle. It stems from jazz and blues, styles of music which African Americans created to retain humanity in the face of adversity, which itself stems from songs used during
Well, that one
slavery
statement
to
is good.
communicate and survive.
Yeah,
On a
that's true.
smaller scale, but in a similar vein, braids and cornrows are not merely stylistic. They're necessary in order to keep black hair neat. So I've been seeing this question a lot.
She said while not
on
wearing
Twitter, and I
cornrows.
think it's really relevant. What would America be like if we loved black people as much as we love black culture?
Oh,
And that last line.
that it is so stupid. It's so okay.
what ruined it for me.
it is. Hold on. Let me switch this back
Had
to
it not been for that last line,
so you can see
we
my
could write
pretty
it
face.
off as she's young, and she's being told by everyone around her, because if you work in the movie business, you are saturated
Well,
with this
look,
message.
look.
The fact
This
that
is the
she's
thing that
being as
pisses me
civil
off.
as she is speaks to her character,
Let me put it this
in
way.
my opinion.
What pisses me off is she pushes this line right at the end. She says, and it
But
sounds
then
so
she had
profound,
to
but
do
it's
it.
not.
She had to say, if only you guys loved black people as much as you love black
I just
culture."
realized I didn't have my mic on. Yeah, yeah. Because here's the thing. Like that line sounds so very profound, but it's not. It's not because the thing is if black people cared about black lives, which is this is going to sound really mean, but they don't. They don't. If look, the biggest thing that connects black people to crime right now, especially violent crime, is poverty. There's a huge correlation between poverty and violent crime. And the thing is the black community has I believe the largest percentage of poverty on a per capita basis of any racial group. But the thing is white people aren't forcing them there. Okay? We're not. I have several friends who are teachers in inner city schools. They deal with a lot of, and this is what they see. And I commented this on a previous video. They see, black kids who would otherwise be successful being told by their peers, if you're doing good in school, you're just trying to suck up to the white man. If they act respectful to cops, it's like you're trying to, you're just trying to, suck up to the pigs. You're trying to
That happened
act
to
like
my
a white
best
man.
friend
You're trying,
in high
stop
school.
talking white. They make this thing, and the thing is it's like, so they basically make this reinforce this habit. White people aren't doing this, by the way. White people aren't like if I go and I succeed. When I was a kid, if I went and got a good grade, my parents were like, really, great, cool. My friends were jealous of me if I got an A and they didn't, right? But and that would make me try harder in school to do better. But you have black kids who are going to school who are intentionally failing because it makes them cool, because it gives them swag, because they ain't sucking up to the white man. And yeah, and this is not white people. White people aren't doing this. I'm not trying to I'm not telling this to black kids. Other black kids are telling this to other black kids. Black adults are telling this to black kids. Literally, black culture, and this is the problem. If you're going to talk about how, if you're going to appropriate black culture, you need to care about black issues. Let's talk about black issues that really matter. Like black people literally subverting the youth and preventing them from ever being able to get a good job. Let's talk about that. Because you're at this point, any sort, like, even if we say, yes, there's some sort of systemic racism going on that somewhat prevents, I guarantee you, the amount of damage done by forcing kids to do badly in school and to prevent them from actually gaining the knowledge needed to do a good job, and the damage done by convincing them that if they ever do a good job for their boss, that they're trying to suck to the white man and that's not desirable, or teaching them to disrespect cops and cause confrontations to occur, those do way more damage than any sort of systematic racism. And then you look at the fact that the illegitimacy rating, the illegitimacy rate in the black community is like something like 80%. 80% of black babies are born without a father or without a mother. Usually, well, not born immediately without a mother, but soon to be without a mother, or born without one or sometimes both parents if they go into if they go to an orphanage. So there's this thing where like there are three things that you need to do in order to not be in poverty. And it's, graduate from high school, get a job out of high school, and don't have a kid until you're married. That's it. That's like, if you do those things, like your chances of not being in grinding poverty are like almost guaranteed. But what are they doing? They're black people are telling black children not to succeed in school, and then it's cool to mouth off to cops, and then they're going and having unprotected sex and having babies out of wedlock. That's not, white people aren't forcing them to do that. That's black people who are making those choices. I mean, you can't, there's no white man who's standing inside the room of every black couple having sex going, hey, don't put on a condom. Just because, trust me. Don't put on a condom. That's a bad idea. No, bro. You can pull out. You can pull out. And then, whenever he's about to come, he shoves his hips down and prevents him from pulling out. That's not happening. That's not happening. It used to be that black people had a lower crime rate than white people. That black people had better legitimacy rates than white people. Like if you go back to, I think it was like the 60s or 70s, ironically during the time of Jim Crow. Like as a aside from the systematic racism that did exist at that time, that was absolutely terrible. Like as a measure of cultural strength, black people were way above white people at that time. And then something happened.
Even more pronounced in the 30s and 40s.
Yeah, but now it's just completely reversed to where systematic racism is so subtle that people are literally seeing ghosts and crying about racism simply because this guy's black and this guy's white, therefore racism. Which is kind of like, no, you actually have to prove racist intent for it to be racist. Generally, that generally has to happen. And instead, they're seeing ghosts while at the same time crippling their own youth from ever succeeding. That's the black issue that I care about, as a guy who occasionally listens to hip hop by Donald Glover or Childish Gambino and George Watsky, who is the whitest rapper I have ever met. Completely like his original YouTube video that went famous was like "Pale Kid Raps Fast." Like it was ridiculous. Like he capitalized on the fact that he was so wet and pale. But if you're gonna bring up stuff about black issues, bring up the stuff that matters. Bring up the 80% illegitimacy rate. Bring up the 7,000 black people murdered by other black people on a yearly basis. Don't bring up the 200 black people killed by cops that may or may not have been racist. Bring up the gang culture that is a part of black culture. Like, bring up that shit. That's the stuff that kills more black people than anything else. You get rid of gang culture, and you get rid of the 80% illegitimacy rate, and you get rid of all the Planned Parenthood centers that are unfortunately centered around areas of poverty, mostly black areas, mostly black communities. I mean, you do that, and you will do way more to help the black people than complaining about 200 black lives killed by police that may or may not have been racist and may or may not have been caused by the black person doing something in the first place. What's bigger, 7,000 or 200? What's more important, an 80% illegitimacy rate or some CEO maybe being an asshole? I'm pretty sure it's quite clear. What do you think, Josh? Josh. Oh well.
Ah, there we are. Sorry about that.
Hey there.
So, I was saying something along these lines. Tell you what, while you deal with that, the rest of us will try to work to reduce the drug wars. That way we can at least reduce police interactions in general, because right now that's the only reason why
I'm a fan of that.
Is so high. Hey, we'll all do our part to reduce police brutality. To reduce the number of encounters, you'll reduce the number of problems. So tell you what, while you deal with gang culture, we'll deal with this stupid drug war, okay? Can we agree on that?
Yeah, and also black people complaining about getting busted for doing drugs at a higher rate than white people. One, it's other black people calling cops to the community, so deal with that first. Two, don't do drugs in a high crime area. Oh my god, dude. Are you serious? There's increased police presence. There's like shooting, like you don't fucking smoke pot, man. And it like go to, if you want to smoke pot, go to like dress up in a suit and go to a white neighborhood. Get high over there. You'll be fine. I guarantee. An affluent white
culture.
I'm just saying, like, don't, like, that's just statistical. That just makes sense. Like, don't fucking. Anyways, that's it. I gotta get going, man.
Oh, really? Never got to finish my story.
Oh, you can finish yours.
Okay. So, listen, we're talking about cultural appropriation. We're talking about taking something from another culture and incorporate it into your own. A good way to think about this isn't exactly how the word works, but to make it appropriate for your culture, to adapt it to serve your needs. You see, I was a music major, and I just wrote a paper on global influences on Western music and why the rest of the world can't claim credit for it because, yes, it's true that Western music took a heck of a lot. Most of our orchestra is based on something from the Turkish war band.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of them. A lot of the cymbals, a lot of the oboes, a lot of the orchestration even. It came from, while the Turks were busy killing us, they were sending out bands, and we're like, it sucks that we're enemies. Your bands are awesome. So when the wars finally calmed down, the Turks had an interesting idea. I tell you what, we'll send our bands over to you to play for your royalty. And we're like, this is a great idea. And now we'll send some of our guys to learn from you. We weren't actually interested in the music because it sucked. It actually sucked.
Really?
But the instrumentation was wonderful. And so we borrowed it. We made it appropriate. So you could not tell. Mozart was actually very well known for using Turkish melodies, Turkish ideas, and especially Turkish rhythms in his music. A la Turca.
That damn cultural appropriator, man.
Now, this idea...
Just remember, but here's the thing, Josh. Just remember, if you listen to any Mozart now, you have to be you have to care about Turkish issues. Or else, you're a racist.
I know. The funny thing, and I could go on all day about this, because music itself, once two styles interact, that's it. There's no separating them again. So, let me tell you a little something. The curious thing about the West is that we are more curious about other cultures than most cultures in the world, but we're not delusional enough to say that they're equal, of equal merit, of equal value. Now, which one is better than the other? Stay tuned. We can talk about that another time. But, the idea that somehow taking from another culture, we took from our mortal enemies, the Turks, people who wanted to conquer and enslave us. We found something of value in them. Now, blacks in America are not the enemy. So, does it surprise you, people who are generally well-liked, that people want to emulate them? It should not. One of the problems we're running into is that Black America is trying to distinguish itself, trying to be unique. And so that's why when the rest of the country, particularly people of white skin, start saying words that have traditionally been part of a black community, he's like, no, you can't say that. You'll ruin it. You'll hear this again and again. White people, stop saying it. You're taking away our uniqueness. That's what they're actually upset about,
Right.
because they view their culture as subordinate to skin color. And I would actually argue that most of their culture is not actually based on skin color, it's based on urban culture.
Yeah.
Because I went to school in New Jersey, and so you see a lot of kids, a lot of different skin colors, and they're all trying to act what would be stereotypically considered black. I submit to you, this is my hypothesis,
Right.
that the urban mentality, no one's gonna notice me unless I flail my arms and do something
Swag.
drastic and make people respect me. Otherwise, it won't matter. Black communities tend to be centered in poor, Democrat-run urban areas.
Yeah.
And so a lot of what we consider to be quote-unquote black culture is actually trying to get by in a Democrat-run, poverty-stricken, urban or suburban center. You know who doesn't seem to have all these problems? Black farmers. They don't seem to have this identity crisis because they work.
Right.
And they know they work. And they know that they are one season away from starving to death, and so they don't have the luxury to be bothered by such things. You want to know who does bother? Regardless of skin color, what, do you think white welfare recipients are somehow immune from being complete pricks? Really? Go to New Jersey sometime. Take a walk in Patterson. I actually volunteered, my brother and I both at different times, tutored in Patterson. Like the drug capital of New Jersey.
Right.
Take a walk around. Take a look. Seriously, I could do this all day. I really could.
No, we can't do that because I got to get going. Anyways, this has been the Conservative Echo Chamber. It's okay, we'll have plenty more to do. Conservative Echo Chamber signing out for now. Amandala, we wish you well in your black issue fighting. Goodbye.